Hi, in this video, we are going to discuss about the blood-borne pathogen standards 29 CFR 1910-1030. This is under the module regulation of a certified safety professional exam. So first we are going to see the scope, application and definition. So this standard applies to all occupational exposure to the blood or other potentially infectious materials present in the workplace. So now we are going to see the definition. So the blood means a human blood component and products made from human blood. Then the next is the blood-borne pathogens. It means the pathogenic microorganisms that are present in human blood and cause disease in humans. These pathogens include but are not limited to hepatitis B virus, that is in the short form it is written as HBV, and human immunodeficiency virus, that is HIV. So other potentially infectious material means the following human blood fluids like semen, vaginal secretions, cerebrospinal fluid, synovial fluid, and many more are there. So we don't need to remember all this. So now under this OSHA regulation, we need exposure control plan. So every employer having an employees with occupational exposure or potential exposure to blood-borne pathogen shall establish a written exposure control plan designed to eliminate or minimize employees' exposure. So, what the exposure control plan shall contain? So, it should contain the exposure determination, how to determine the exposure, then schedule and method of implementation for method of compliance, then HIV and HBV research laboratories and production facilities, then hepatitis B vaccination and post-exposure evaluation and follow-up, then communication of the hazard to employees and record keeping. So the exposure control plan shall be reviewed and updated at least annually and whenever necessary to reflect new or modified tasks and procedures that affect occupational exposure and to reflect new or revised employee position with occupational exposure. So the synopsis is that there should be a method to determine the exposure, then the schedule and method of implementation for method of compliance, then HIV and HPV research laboratory and production facilities, then evaluation of the post-exposure and hepatitis B vaccination follow-ups, and the communication of the hazard to the employees and record keeping. So hepatitis B vaccination and post-exposure follow-ups. So in this, the employer shall make available the hepatitis B vaccine and vaccination series to all the employees who have occupational exposure and post-exposure evaluation and follow-ups to all employees who have had an exposure incident. Should an employee refuse to take the hepatitis B vaccine, the employer is required to obtain a written statement of his or her refusal. Now, under this exposure control plan, there should be a communication of the hazard to employees. So, this can be done by labels and signs that should be affixed to the containers of the regulated waste. Then a refrigerator and freezers containing the blood or other potentially infectious material and other containers used to store, transport, or ship the blood or other potentially infectious material. So should have these should have the labels and signs affixed. So under the exposure control plan, there should also be a record keeping. So first is the medical record. The employer shall establish and maintain an accurate record for each employee with occupational exposure. So the record should include the following: the name and the social security number of the employees, a copy of the employee's hepatitis B vaccination status, including the date of all the hepatitis B vaccination, and any medical record relative to the employee's ability to receive the vaccination. Then the record should include the copy of all the result of examination, medical testing, and follow-up procedures. The employer's copy of the healthcare professional written opinion, then the copy of the information provided to the healthcare professional. So, the information contained in the medical record may not be disclosed or reported without the employee's express written consent, except as required by this standard. The employer shall maintain the records required under this standard for at least the duration of the employment plus 30 years. So the training record should include the following information: the date of the training session, the content or the summary of the training session, the name and the qualification of the person conducting the training, the name and the job title of all persons attending the training session. The training record shall be maintained for 3 years from the date on which the training has occurred. So the medical record should be retained for the duration of the employment plus 30 years, and the training record shall be maintained for 3 years from the date on which the training has occurred.